Welcome to the Kentucky A-BRI modules. I'm Christy Bryce from Kentucky A-BRI, and this module is about explicit instruction. Today, we're going to give you one example of an effective practice that can be easily implemented in an inclusive setting. This practice is appropriate for use at all grade levels and in all content areas. It can be used in all educational settings, from one-on-one instruction to whole class general education settings. This practice is providing explicit instruction. As we learned in the Principles of Effective Instruction module, teaching research and educational reform initiatives through the years have alternated between advocating for the use of either an explicit teacher-directed approach or an implicit student-centered approach. Take a moment to reflect on the table in your guided notes. Think through when it would be most appropriate to use explicit versus implicit instruction. In this module, we're going to show you how to effectively implement explicit instruction. Explicit instruction is teacher-directed, structured, and can be used when students are learning new concepts or when they have little background knowledge. Explicit instruction gives teachers a clear outline of how to plan and implement instruction to maximize student learning. It has been well researched over the years. Over 40 years of empirical studies support it. And the key elements needed to implement explicit instruction are clearly established. It is a practice that includes a logical sequence of instruction with embedded scaffolds and opportunities for students to practice with immediate feedback prior to them practicing on their own. While it is teacher-directed, particularly during initial instruction, the high level of teacher involvement fades systematically as the students become more independent. In the next few slides, we will discuss how teachers can plan for and implement explicit instruction in their classrooms. There are 6 major components to explicit instruction. Like any instruction, there's a lot of planning and preparation that must take place before you even set foot in the classroom. The end result of that planning will be an organized lesson that can be implemented at a brisk pace that ensures student engagement and learning. Explicit instruction is teaching in which the teacher selects a critical learning goal, determines what the student should do by the end of the lesson, designs clear instruction, provides clear models, allows students to practice with immediate feedback, and then provides opportunities for independent practice, all while monitoring progress to determine the next instructional steps. This is tough stuff, but I believe in you. Explicit instruction follows an I do, we do, you do model. In the following slides, we'll review in detail each of these components and the planning that must take place before implementation. To begin a lesson using explicit instruction, the teacher will first need to determine what prerequisite skills are needed in order to learn the new content. This is a critical step because without determining the prerequisite skills and then subsequently ensuring that the students have mastered those skills, it's unlikely that they will be successful with the new material presented. In this case, this could be a loss of precious instructional time. After identifying what content the student should already know, the teacher will review those skills and the concepts from the previously taught lessons, all in an effort to determine if students have mastered those necessary prerequisite skills. Ways in which teachers will review material vary, but they can include formative assessments, reviewing homework, or having the students solve an opening problem that uses the prerequisite skills. Prior to beginning the lesson, the teacher would have identified a clear learning target. This learning target will be shared with the students. Like, for example, today we're going to learn how to break multisyllabic words into parts. The presentation of the learning will occur through modeling planned examples. Each example should be broken into smaller components to allow the students to see each of the steps in the process. Most important here is clear, concise language and the use of what is called a think aloud. In a think aloud, the teacher verbalizes how to think through solving the problem while modeling each step. This provides students with a clear understanding of the process the teacher used to arrive at the correct answer. During this modeling phase, which is called the I do phase, the students are observers. Depending on the content, it can be helpful to provide both examples and non-examples. During this presentation phase, the teacher should maintain an effective instructional pace, one that is appropriate for allowing the students to think through the material, but brisk enough to maintain their attention. Students must practice skills in order to master them. Therefore, the next step in explicit instruction is to provide guided practice. This is important because during guided practice, the teacher can observe the students and provide appropriate prompts and immediate feedback. In another module, we will discuss different types of feedback that can be used during instruction to increase student learning. The guided practice is also referred to as we do. During the we do phase, the students are being led through the steps necessary to master a learning target. The teacher is actively providing prompts that give the student information to complete the next step in the learning target. Prompts can be physical, verbal, or visual. An example of a physical prompt may be a teacher holding a student's hand to model how he should grip the pencil correctly. A verbal prompt may include asking a question or making a statement such as, "This hand on the clock is pointing at the hour." Visual prompts are written and include things like anchor charts posted in the classroom that remind students of a process or key points from a given lesson. During guided practice, the students should be provided multiple opportunities to respond. For example, the teacher may be completing a problem on the smartboard while the students are at their seats completing the same problem on their individual whiteboard. The teacher will guide the students through each step in completing the problem, pausing to ask questions about the next step, and immediately clarifying incorrect responses through modeling the correct response and then providing reinforcement. It is important to correct errors during this time in order to ensure high rates of success later. Using the formative assessment information being gathered at this time, the teacher can quickly identify students who may need more intensive reteaching prior to being given time to practice independently. We want students to practice correct answers, not errors. I had a great instructional coach tell me one time, "Remember, it's not practice makes perfect, it's perfect practice makes perfect." For those who are ready, the next step is independent practice. During the independent phase of explicit instruction, also known as the you do phase, the teacher will review the expectations for what the student should do in order to meet the learning target. Then the teacher will allow the students to work without support. During this phase, the teacher can provide feedback at 2 times, immediately to correct errors and reinforce correct responses, and delayed, like giving corrective feedback on a homework assignment after the student turns it in. Both types of feedback are valuable for the student, and they allow the teacher to make decisions about next steps in progress toward the larger learning standard. One of these decisions may be how to embed additional practice opportunities. For many skills, it is important for students to continue practicing until they become automatic. It may be effective for the teacher to use distributed practice opportunities, which are opportunities that are provided across time. Essentially, the teacher needs to determine how frequently to revisit a particular concept to ensure that it is maintained. Finally, no instructional sequence would be complete without progress monitoring. Teachers use progress monitoring to verify that students have mastered, maintained, and generalized skills. This allows decisions to be made about next steps in the learning sequence. The key to progress monitoring is to collect data frequently, enough to make relevant instructional decisions. Data can be collected through permanent products such as a writing sample or a strategic assignment. Either way, collecting data and reviewing it to make informed decisions is best practice and will lead to increased student learning. This module provided information on what explicit instruction is and how to plan so that you could immediately implement explicit instruction in your classroom. Explicit instruction is an effective practice that can be used in inclusive settings, and when used with fidelity, it can substantially increase student learning in your classroom. For more information on this and other effective strategies for inclusive settings, visit the Kentucky ABRI website.